That isn't working. Okay, we're recording. Fantastic. What is it they used to say on Big Brother? Do not swear. All right. Well, let's get kicked off and see if we can get through this and get out and catch a bit of sunshine at the end of the day. So super quick introductions. Let's see. My name's Dave Anderson from the Irish Cycling Campaign. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction about the Irish Cycling Campaign and where we are right now, and possibly might ask Damien to say a few words as well. And then the main section of the webinar will be with Robert from Telraam, who's going to talk to us about the devices and how they work and all of that good stuff. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit of our experiences here in Navan using the devices and how we've been trying to use that to improve our advocacy. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. So that's the plan. We'll see how that goes. Let's plod along. So we're in a bit of a transition period at the moment with the Irish Cycling Campaign. We're transforming from the beautiful caterpillar that was cyclist.ie into the beautiful butterfly that will be the Irish Cycling Campaign, and we're currently in a sort of transitional phase with our logo and our brand and our systems, and we're working very hard to get all of that up and running and looking good and working properly. So the target for that will be sometime during the summer, hopefully earlier summer than later summer. And we have our new membership system for the national organization as well. So a very quick summary is that Cyclist.ie was essentially a federation of groups, and we're moving to a national organization where everyone is a member of the national organization. We still have local groups that are affiliated with the campaign. So I've probably murdered that a little bit. I don't know, Damien, if you want to perhaps jump in and correct any of that.
No, Dave, I think that's a great introduction. Just to add, we're the member for Ireland of the European Cyclist Federation, which itself represents around 70 mainly national cycling advocacy organisations, and I'm just back from their AGM yesterday. Our big focus in Irish Cycling Campaign at the moment is really getting ready for the local elections and European elections and keeping cycling to the fore and engaging with all of the parties. So there's lots more on our website if you'd like to check it out, and happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Great stuff. Perfect. Okay, well let's chug along. Now let's see if we can switch over to Rob to do your presentation.
There we go. Despite all our testing earlier, I am currently unable to share my screen, I'm afraid, Dave.
Aha.
I promise we did test this and try this earlier.
Yeah, maybe now that I've put all of the host controls on there, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll just switch all of that host control stuff off. Right. And if everyone could behave themselves.
Everyone be good.
Yeah, is that any better?
Yeah, I'm almost there.
Fantastic.
Right. So hello, welcome. Thank you everyone for turning up this evening. I appreciate it very much. My name's Rob McIntosh, and I just want to give you a sort of an overview of who Telraam is and what we do. Some of you may already know us, so hopefully it's not too boring for you. Feel free to ask more detailed questions later on, but hopefully this will give you an overview, and we'll then chat later on about how we take this and you can use it in practice depending on, I'm sure you all have different needs and different experiences. So Telraam is a very small startup. Actually, this photo is now a little bit dated, I have to admit. I have a new colleague, in fact, we have two new colleagues, but I have a new colleague called Anna, who's just joined us, Anna Marquez, who's actually on the call with me this evening, who is also sort of interested in what we do all over the world. But yeah, you can see there's only about 8 of us now in the organization. So it's a small organization in Leuven. We are a spin-off of a transport planning company called TML, Transport Mobility Leuven, and it itself is a spin-off of the University of Leuven, who have sort of a lot of engineering and mobility interests. So very much a sort of technical background, but the other partner of our startup is Mobile 21. That's very much an engagement and citizen engagement company who go out and do all the citizen conversations, the sort of workshops. And so we brought the two together in the concept, and that's how we came up with Telraam and how Telraam is used there. Leuven is about 20 minutes outside of Brussels, and if you've never heard of it, that's probably fair. But if you're a drinker of Stella Artois, you might actually be familiar with it, because this is the home of Stella Artois. But it'll soon be more famous for Telraam. Well, we'll see. Strange name, so very quickly I'll address that straight off the bat. Leuven is in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, and so we use the Dutch word of Telraam, which as a whole means abacus. Telraam is an abacus for counting, but funnily enough, it's actually made up of 2 words, tel meaning counting and raam meaning window. So because it's quite appropriate, this device sits in your window and does the counting, we thought we'd hold on to it, even though in the English-speaking world, Telraam isn't always the easiest to type. I promise you get used to typing the AA. But yeah, it's quite a fun one. Now, you may have heard of us because in 2020, we were funded by the European Union through the Horizon program to test run our concept of a traffic counting device run by citizens. The original model that we came up with was a Raspberry Pi device with a camera, as you can see, attached there. And we ran this in a number of European countries to test the quality of the counts and also the process for engaging citizens in the process of mobility planning locally to them. And that ran for quite a while. Obviously, we're a little bit interrupted by COVID, but it did still give us lots of information, lots of experience. And I think we mainly, I think, in Ireland ran it in Dublin, but as you can see, we did also run small networks in other parts of the country. So some of you may be familiar with us and some of the data from the original device, but we have changed a lot since then. That experience taught us a lot about ease of installation, some of the issues with the counts, the need for being more specific. And so what we did in March, well, we spent over a year working on this, but we launched this in March 2023, is what we now call the S2, the Series 2 of the Telraam. This is our new sensor. You'll see that picture on the screen. I've got one in my hand. I'll show you later on. I'm probably a little small window at the moment. The idea of this new device is that it counts a lot more modes. It's much easier to install. And as you can see, it also gives you feedback on the screen. But what's really useful about it is that not only does it break down the vehicles into cars, vans, trucks, and buses, and so on, but it gives you specific counts on bikes, separate from motorbikes, and pedestrians. And the thing is, this is a fairly unique tool because it gives you all of those modes from the same segment, as opposed to having multiple different sensors, one doing like pneumatic strips counting cars, eco counters doing bikes, manual counts for pedestrians, etc. It's the same device from the same location, same times of day, so you can see very much how that data is relative to each other. I won't go into the great specs. If there's anyone very technical who wants to know about it, I can tell you about it, but essentially it's a camera-based system still. The camera is built into the device, a nice wide angle, and it has multiple chips on it, one of which is designed specifically, has a tool on it for AI, which sees what the camera is looking at and categorizes that, gives us a data table and sends that back to our servers. So all of that processing is now happening on the device. There's no need for us to send video anywhere. We just get the data tables, and yeah, very nice and clever. And literally all it needs now is a plug, because it sends the data over the air. It's an Internet of Things device, so it has its own SIM card. The great thing also is that you don't need to log. You can log into a dashboard. I'll show that in a minute. But actually, the user gets feedback directly on their window of the different counts happening. What's the latest 24 hours? What was the last 15 minutes or hour? And you know, your specific counts of the main categories as well. So it feels a bit more interactive. It gives that feedback to the citizen who's volunteered their window to count this data, can now feel like they're really very part of that data gathering. So as I say, the key thing for us is not only have we developed the technology for carrying out the count, but we've developed an approach which says it isn't just about generating data. Lots of data gets generated all the time. The thing is, we don't always trust it, or it's not always timely, or it's always it's kept private. And so our approach is to be open data and using citizens to gather the data itself, put it in their window, and therefore also be engaged from the start with the authorities, whether it's local authorities, national authorities, or campaign groups, so that from the moment you're counting, you're engaged in that process. So it's creating the data, analyzing the data, co-creating solutions, working on the plans, rather than being brought in at the end to say yay or nay on some program that some other professional may have put together. That is our citizen science approach to data gathering from the devices. That means that it's designed not just for example, cities to buy and install locally, but for groups to install for themselves, to use to create the data they need to back up whatever campaign they're working on, whether it's active travel, whether it's noise related, whether it's speed related. You can get these devices now and go not just argue with your local councillor, but bring data to the conversation, which makes it a much more effective tool. Just a quick one for us to explain some of the technical aspects, just so if you're thinking about how this gets used. The idea is that it goes in that citizen's window that is ideally a first or second floor above ground, because it looks down across the road and can see, therefore, pavements on both sides, the road, all the road users, people walking past. As long as it has a nice clear view, we can then categorize that data. You can't see huge distances. We're talking about 20, 25 meters or so. But if you're thinking about a residential street where your house is looking out over that, those are the kinds of residential streets are the ones where data is not usually collected by anyone. And these are the key ones where putting a cost-effective little device like ours in there gives you data which really no one knows, no one has at the moment. The other big question we get asked a lot, which I'll just quickly cover, is privacy. Although it's camera-based, as I said, it doesn't send us any video. It does this all on the device. It is a low-resolution camera, so it can recognize that black object there is a car, but not enough to read its number plate, for example. It can't see anyone's faces. It doesn't, because it doesn't recognize the number plate, it can't track a car, let's say, from one camera to another. So we're not doing any route tracing. It's just a case of counting the number of objects that are passing a particular point at a particular time. So GDPR doesn't apply here because we're not collecting private information. So you can be sure that if you're putting it up and your neighbor comes and says, you know, you've got a camera pointing at my house, you can say, we don't see anything, we don't collect data, we don't know who's moving where. And if, yeah, we've been asked before about police, for example, did you capture that accident? No, it's not possible. It's just a count. I am happy if you want to ask questions in the chat, by the way. If I'm going too fast on anything, please feel free to jump in there. I should be able to read and speak at the same time. I'm conscious I'm going quite quickly, but I want to get on with your evening and get into the Q&A. Just again, to emphasize, our approach has been not only to involve citizens, but to keep the data as open as possible. So we make our data of every device that's plugged in, the basic data available for free on the platform. So you can go to telraam.net, browse the map, click on the device, and see the 4 main modes, which is the pedestrians, two-wheelers, cars, and heavy vehicles. You get that data and just look at it, and you can even actually use our API to download it for a number of devices if that's what you want to do. The idea is to give lots of people a chance to analyze data, maybe even work with it if they're a campaign, for example, to be able to use it. There's a lot more data behind that, which is available by subscription, but as much as possible is open for everyone to look at. The API includes all this data, and if you have a subscription, you get the full 10 modes that we have available from the device. So the S2 captures bikes, as I say, pedestrians, bikes, motorbikes, cars, buses, trucks, vans. It does actually do tractors, which might be relevant in certain situations. And we are testing, there's prams and strollers are also there. What we don't capture at the moment, because it get asked this a lot, is scooters, e-scooters. We don't do them. They're still, the device is a low res. It doesn't see someone on a two-wheel scooter. It'll probably count that as a pedestrian, unfortunately. We'll work on that one. So just very quickly, once you've got these devices, what do you get? The data is collected. You have access to it via the screen, but also via a dashboard. So you as a user, if you have one in your window, get to see it. And if you have a network of them, there is also a network dashboard, which has a lot of tools for reporting, analyzing all the devices in your area. So you can have, let's say, 20, 30 devices in a city. And if you're running that network, you now have lots of data points. You can compare and contrast different locations, different times of day, etc. That's all available through this dashboard that we offer. Let me quickly just show you what kind of data it gathers. It's these are all the modes, and you can see that for each day we'll give you a breakdown of the totals. You can just this is a way to look at it at a glance. But the basic mode is to break these down also into hourly, so not just daily, but hourly modes. And if you have a data subscription and you need it, not everyone does, but if you're looking at, for example, school streets, you might want, we can do every 15 minutes. So you have that data down to every 15 minutes for every mode. And it'll appear like this. You can filter this as well. And so as an example for the 15-minute modes, we're looking here at a couple of days. We'll present the data. This is cars. We could have done it for, I should have done it for the bikes, but you'll see the dotted line there is your average expected based on our calculations. The gray line is your standard deviation, and then there was your actual count. So you can see it's pretty much, these ones seem to be pretty much following, but maybe that Thursday was looking a little bit busy with the cars. Lots of data you can get at a glance just looking at these reports. There's some trend reports. So heat maps, for example, of the busiest times of day. This is you see the bikes are much busier at 8 in the morning and 6 for commuting time. Speeds. We also, for cars, will give you an indication of speeds. So we're not obviously checking out the speeds of bikes. Maybe that's something that's coming, but the one that matters obviously is our cars sticking to the speed limit on the particular road. Is that affecting how safe people feel on that road, and therefore how many people cycle and walk on it? That's something you can see from this. We'll give you the breakdown into 10 km/h bins, but also give you a calculation of the V85, which is the 85th percentile. that's a good figure to use, especially when pushing for speed limiting on roads to local authorities. They'll recognize that number. And then the breakdown. Now, I just wanted to quickly get onto a couple of case studies, some examples of how that data has been used to give you an idea of what it is. And then I think Dave has some conversations about this as well. This is a graph. You won't be able to see all the details, but this is a demonstration of the value of having a device running continuously to show you, because that's what the devices do. They'll count every hour, every day. This is what happened in COVID. So we've indexed the traffic according to the baseline before COVID, and then you can see immediately as lockdowns came in what happened to the traffic. I think this is in across a number of devices in Belgium. You'll see the blue line is car traffic. It dropped to about 40% of the previous baseline. But you'll see what happened to cycling, which is the green line. We were talking 100, 120, 150% of normal, because of course cycling was considered not only a means of transport but a means of exercise, which was allowed. So here we have data as a demonstration. Obviously, the same kind of data might happen if you're looking at a road where there's been some traffic intervention, where there's been a bus gate put in, for example, or a school street put in, and you can see how traffic changes over time at a glance. Here's an interesting one just to show a single device was used to analyze a street. In this case, the person was had been advocating for a long time that the cars were traveling too fast on their street, so that's why they bought the device. And you'll see the red line is the percentage of traffic traveling above the speed limit on this particular road. So for 6 months of the year, that it was a roughly 50% of traffic was above the speed limit. Because of the advocacy, they put in that number sign tracking the driver's speed to warn them of the speed. And you can see immediately it had an effect, but only a small effect, down to about 30 to 40% traveling, but a noticeable effect. But because it still wasn't effective, they then managed to get them to put in a speed bump on this particular date, and immediately, end of November there, December traffic dropped off. Great example. We didn't do this. This was shared with us by the advocates themselves, demonstrating how continuous tracking, bringing the data to the councillor to make them take action, and demonstrating that that action had an effect was incredibly useful for them and great for us. So you can imagine this if you're looking at adding cycle lanes or making permanent cycle lanes, protected ones as opposed to painted lines, etc. What effect that has, when it happened, immediately, did it have an effect, and what was it? And just a nice.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it's been a very effective, and that's one of our greatest fans. She's been a great fan ever since, because she used our data to get to do exactly what she wanted for years. Just a nice little quick one here. You can see the data I showed us before, the daily. That green percentage is the two-wheelers, and then on that particular day they had the national cycle or world cycle championship going through Leuven. Slight change in the cycle numbers. Again, it's just a way of showing that you can track these things and what a difference it makes to have it running continuously. So I've spoken a lot. I'm sure you have lots of questions. The idea here is to give you an idea of what the device can do. But now the question is, what would you like it to do? And maybe Dave can talk about what he's done with it, and I can answer your questions about how we can help you.
Fantastic, Robert. That's amazing. So I'll share my screen and just go through some of the experiences that we've had, and then open it up to Q&A. Here we go. That's coming up. Great. Yeah, so we've been sort of playing around with these devices for a few years now. We got our first device back in 2021, which was the version 1, essentially a sort of Raspberry Pi sort of prototype. I'll show you in the next slides where we positioned that and how it didn't work very well for us. And then we learned, and we also bought an S2 there in 2023, got that deployed, and that was much more successful in terms of the information that we got. And then we managed to find a little bit more funding. So we've been very focused on finding funding to buy new devices. And we've got several.
Sorry, Dylan. Dylan's getting a bit too sprayed there. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to mute yourself there? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, looking after you boys. Sorry.
Right, no worries. Yeah, and then I suppose we've got a few grant applications open at the moment, so we'll either have a flood of Telraam devices or none, depending on how the grants go. So in terms of the positioning, so this was our very first device, and it was on the left-hand side above the shop there. And as you can see, there's a bit of a car park there, so quite a distance from there to the road, and also it's near to traffic lights, so very often on the right hand side it's standing traffic, and we saw that really it wasn't a good position for us at all. We're very keen to monitor this road, but none of the houses and none of the positions are quite suitable for that. So that was a really useful learning. And we have lots of photos of traffic standing still and going nowhere. And that in itself is kind of useful and interesting to have anyway. So then from there, when we got the new device, we got to a local bike shop to put that up for us. And it was as high up in the store window as we could get it. So I don't think it was quite on the level of the sort of first floor, but it was pretty good, and the data has been coming back pretty well and consistently on the whole since then. I think one thing that we didn't realize is that it gets dark in winter, and the days are shorter. And the device counts during the day, so you'll see that the number of sort of cars ebbs and flows as the short days come in, and then it comes back into springtime. And I think the other thing that we learned from this, it was just how many cars go down this little road. There's a school nearby, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of cars going past here all of the time, and that sort of blew my mind, at least. So we've had that device up since last summer, I want to say, and then this one we put in just about 6 weeks, 2 months ago. Again, it's a little bit far back from the road, but the window's kind of high up. And that's been giving us some reasonable data. The reason we put it there is that there are a lot of community groups that use this location. And so now the test that we're trying to do here is, can we get people interested in traffic data? Unfortunately, most normal people, let's say, aren't as excited as we are about traffic data. So we're sort of trying to engage them. Everyone gets very excited about traffic and bad traffic, though. So I think that could be the hook. And of course, people on bikes make the traffic flow better for everybody. So in terms of the data insights, you might not be able to see there from the chart on the right, but at the bike shop, a really significant proportion of people are speeding on that road all the time. So I checked, and yesterday there were 478 cars that were at 70 kilometers an hour or more in a 50 zone. So I know there's a sort of tolerance there, but they're certainly exceeding 50 on that road in a very large volume. And then from our most recent sensor, that's on a road where there are no cycle lanes and no cycle infrastructure at all. and the modal share for cycling is actually double what it is in the area that has cycle lanes. So not really sure what's going on there. It's a similar type area with residential and a school, and a lot more bikes. So we've yet to figure out what's going on there. That really surprised us as to why that's happening. In terms of advocacy, we've spoken at length to our local authority, and they've responded fairly positively, I want to say. So we had this idea of, similar to a sustainable energy community, a sort of active travel hub where we would have several of these devices and build communities around them that would sort of sustain from year to year. I think, as I mentioned there, the challenge of getting people excited in transport data is a little bit harder than we had imagined. From talking to the local authority, we then spoke to the NTA, and we found out that actually for Ireland, there's no standard for measuring active travel schemes. So, you know, you put in some kind of active travel cycle paths or foot paths or whatever, and there's no standardized method of looking at the impact there. They're certainly interested in trying to do that, but there's nothing there at the moment. So that means that local authorities are left to their own devices to figure out what to do. And then in terms of funding, there was a really nice, or is a really nice small bit of funding from ChangeX to the tune of about €500. We got in there luckily just at the right time and snagged those. But it tends to run out every so often. So the fund has to be replenished, and I think they're waiting for that fund to be replenished. So you can get in a wait list for that funding, for €500 of funding, and the form is super short. It's the shortest form I've ever filled in for that amount of money. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. Much easier than anything like the climate action funds or the community funds. So if you don't like filling in forms, ChangeX is the way to go. That's it. I suppose a little pitch for anyone who's not already a member. Please take out your phone, scan the QR code, and punch in your credit card number. I'll pause for a couple of minutes while you go do that. I'm only kidding. When you sign up, you can also get 20% off smart bike lights, which will track how bumpy the roads are. And if you're sort of weaving around all over the road, then it can sort of record that and produce interesting data. So we're just starting to sort of look into that and see if that might be a complementary data set to the stuff that we're getting from Telraam. So I'll stop talking, and we'll open it up for questions, unless, Robert, you had anything else to add to that.
No, that was great. That's really interesting. I hadn't actually looked at your data before specifically. I just brought it up to have a quick look. You're very right about so far the devices are daylight counting, but we are about to launch nighttime counts so that we can update the device remotely, and we will be bringing night counts to the device. It will only be for vehicles, unfortunately, because it uses light tracking, and bike lights aren't bright enough. So we'll be counting them as cars. And we're also looking at bringing in an outdoor device in the near future that will actually be able to be outside rather than inside someone's window. But I can't tell you much more about that because I haven't seen it yet. It's still in final stages of development and testing. I see there's a raised hand as well.
I'm Owen, and I'd like to tell you what we're setting out to do with our Telraam project and maybe get some advice about if we're in the right direction. We run a cycle bus that runs the same route every day. Brings kids down a road that's called Dr. Mannix Road all the way on the Salt Hill Road into town. We drop off at 2 schools, and the council have for years been talking about maybe putting a cycle lane on this lovely wide Dr. Mannix Road. I mean, the actual carriageway is about 9 meters wide, and there's grass verges and stuff. It's perfect for a lane, but there's definitely been some local opposition. Might cause some trees to be cut down, that type of thing. So, and parking and stuff. So, I'm hoping to use this data as part of the case to kind of get talking to the council's cycle lane design team. But we're kind of focused on term time as a cycle bus, for a school cycle bus. There's only about 8 or 10 weeks of term time left. And what we're planning to do, that I've ordered the device and it probably come this week. I'm planning to put it in a 4 different locations along the route for about 2 weeks each. So, picture of traffic along the route. I'm wondering, does that make sense, or is it better to leave it in one location for longer and try funds for another device?
It is a good question. It's better really to have longer series of data in one location, because whatever variations happen. The same problem with like the current alternatives is either manual counts or pneumatic strips. If they're only in for a couple of weeks and something happens, it's bad weather, or traffic's diverted for some reason, it's not representative. So if you have it in one place for several months, you get a much better view of the data. And if you have it then over a longer period of time, you also get to see seasonal variations and so on, which help give a better picture. But if you need to move it, you can. If that's what it is, you need to assess whether there are very different patterns between this segment and another, because let's say another road joins it, or it's a particular route taken by I don't know, commercial vehicles in the morning as a rat run, and you want to compare the two. It is possible to do, and it doesn't take any time to calibrate. It'll count straight away. So it is possible. It just depends what data you think would be what is the kind of data that will have the most influence in your discussion with the council. What do they need to know? Is it the number of cars? Is it speed? Is it when cars are coming, for example, at time of day? Is it how many other cyclists are using the road other than the cycle bus in the morning and evenings, for example? You might be surprised that there's actually a lot more during the day, and therefore there's a higher need for a bike lane. I don't know. So it kind of depends on what kind of data you want to get as to the best way to do it. But it sounds like it'll be effective one way or the other. It's just a matter of positioning it correctly and getting the data that you need. Hopefully I answered that one enough for now.
Yeah, that did. Thanks a million. I might see if I can get my hands on another Telraam as well. One of the people on the call just messaged me to say I could borrow theirs, so I think we might have at least 2 to play with, and for our 4 locations. Okay, that'd be great to sort of get, have multiple, especially if they're running at the same time in different segments, to see if there's a difference between them. Because if you have the same one and move it, then you can't say how it's different, whether it just happened to be different on the street that day, or if it's different at that particular location. So you can compare and contrast between the two. Bob, I see, has raised a hand.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Dave and Robert and everybody else on the call. I'm a county councillor down here in Naas, County Kildare, and one of the lines, I suppose, that was said earlier on is trying to get people interested in traffic data. And what has surprised me since I was co-opted onto the council in June of just last year is we form policy at local level without and not necessarily supported by facts or evidence. And so this Telraam device, this is all new to me. I think it is exactly the antidote we need in relation to building coherent traffic policy. And so a couple of questions in relation to the device itself. What is the life expectancy of the device? And if, you're saying it doesn't necessarily work at night, but does it work if the streets that it's on are lit up with street lights as well? And from there then, ultimately, is there any backup when it comes along to analyzing the data? And back to the point, I suppose, the answer to Robert's question is, the longer you have the device in situ on the same stretch of road, I suppose the more scientific the data becomes. But what is the minimum length of time that is required to have reliable data? Can you get away with a week? Does it need to be a minimum of a month? Does it need to be 12 months? And could you guide on that? Thanks.
Of course, all very good questions. So quickly on the daylight aspect, yes, it's currently daylight only. But when we give you analysis of, let's say, averages, rather than taking daily averages, we calculate that based on the number of counting hours in that day. So we can compare 12 o'clock on a Tuesday with another 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, rather than just giving you an average of different times of the year. So you get good data, which you can get a lot of out of, even without having the full, let's say, missing certain hours during the winter time. To be honest, the night counts are coming should count very soon. We have already tested it. We know we need to do minor tweaks, but we hopefully it'll be coming very soon. So by the time you are deploying this, I suspect it'll already be there. So you'll get your vehicle counts at night. In terms of the minimum amount of time, it really depends on what. Yeah, it'll be very specific to the area. We would recommend that it's at least a month or two to give you a reasonable. So, for example, we do this with construction impact assessments. For example, you imagine that someone's going to build a bypass in your area. You'll want to understand what the impact of that is, so that we encourage engineering companies and local planning to actually measure that impact before, during, and after the construction. So in those situations, we'll recommend doing, let's say, at least 3 months to get a baseline, so that in future you'll be able to say, this is what the impact of this bypass or bridge or whatever it is you built has on that same street afterwards. And of course, you also want to monitor the usage of construction equipment and stuff in the meantime. So I would say 2 to 3 months gives you a reasonable baseline. But of course, 2 to 3 months will be one particular season. So if you do those 2 to 3 months are winter, and then you're comparing it with summer, it will be not exactly representative. So the ideal would be to compare this winter with another winter. So therefore, i.e. 12 months. But it's not absolutely necessary if you're looking at more sort of short-term sort of impacts. I forget your middle question.
The length of time that the device, the lifespan.
The lifespan, yes. So our trial ones are still running. So there's V1s, there's about 1,000 of them still out there that are running 4 years later. And so there's 4 years of data at that particular segment. We hope that these will continue at least similarly. The idea, because they're Internet of Things devices, we can actually update the firmware remotely, so that we can also monitor them and upgrade their services and improve the algorithms remotely. So we fully expect these to be running a number of years, and would like to see them in many places established in those locations for quite some time. In cities like Utrecht in the Netherlands, they have something like 300 of them deployed already around the city. So they'll be using those and keeping them going. They're part of their sort of whole smart city approach. And yes, in terms of councillors getting data, it's very useful for you to go back to campaigners for whatever there is they're asking, who say, there's too much traffic, there's speeding, I want more cycling, whatever it is, and not just have that argument about, I feel this way, is, well, let's get some data together, let's gather that, and then we can have a conversation, whether you're for or against it. The data will be there, and they will have helped to gather it, so they'll trust it more, and you don't have to wait to get a highways team to go and deploy and approve things, etc., etc. So yeah, we've seen a number of people do that. In fact, a number of councillors around the UK who've bought devices and make them available to their local citizens to do that. So yeah, very useful for individual as well as the wider campaigns.
Perfect. Hopefully that answers the questions. Ah, Damien has, you have your hand up.
You're
Oops,
on mute.
I think you're muted.
Apologies, had to take a call from radio station a second ago. Yeah, I enjoyed the session very much. Thanks very much, Robert and Dave. Just a small technical question. If there is two people walking side by side along a footpath, perpendicular to the direction that the camera is facing, can it recognize the two people, or does it see them as one? Or equally, if there was a group of school kids walking by, does the resolution allow you to identify the number of people in the group?
Honestly, probably not. So we try and be open and honest about all this. It is a low resolution device. It is quite a cheap device. So just I haven't mentioned this, but just to give you context, the whole device costs 160 euros with that plus that. There's a subscription cost to get access to some extra data if you need it, but that's the ballpark we're talking about. The kind of camera that would do maybe what you're looking for there would be 10 times that probably, to get the kind of resolution to be able to identify every single member of a group. So yes, there will be undercounts of groups. We're much better, for example, at counting people in bikes on a cycle lane than a peloton of a Tour de France. We will definitely undercount those, but it's a systematic undercount. So if you know that we're capturing, let's say, 80% numbers, then you know that it's consistently 80%. You can apply that and you'll see that on a daily basis. So yeah, we won't be able to if people are perfectly aligned, we will probably miss them. And bikes are the same if they happen to be cycling right next to each other. But hopefully, if they're even slightly staggered, the AI can be pretty good at identifying them.
Okay, thank you.
I saw there was another question popped up, but then I missed it.
Yeah, sorry, that's me, if that's all right. Yeah, I don't know if it's similar or not, but I was just wondering, is there any scope or plans for this? I guess I don't know whether it's the software or the hardware, the combination that makes this special, but I guess what I'm wondering is, could the software ever be applied to a phone, which obviously has a high quality camera on it and probably has the RAM or whatever to run the AI? I was just wondering if that's ever in the plans for a subscription or anything.
Not from us. It's a good question. Our software has been specifically designed. In fact, we redesigned a dedicated custom PCB for this particularly. So we have designed this product, and that's how it works. So our software can't do that. There are people who have tried it, and they're using those cameras. There are some apps that try and do some of this. I'll be honest, one of the issues is if you want it counting continuously, you now need a dedicated phone sitting in your window. Now, some people have extra phones. They're not designed to be running 24 hours a day or even 18 hours a day continuously and tracking this. So I have seen some issues with that in terms of battery life and so on. So it's not impossible, and there are some apps trying to do that. It's not our approach. Yeah, it's even a secondhand phone costs more than can cost more than the device that we're selling, which is dedicated to doing this. But yeah, I think it's something that it is possible. We could increase the resolution of our thing, but then we get into this issue of, well, now you're recognizing faces, you can recognize number plates. We have to then demonstrate that we're not capturing it, that we're not storing that, we're not using that data. It becomes a little bit more complex. So our AI is trained on a low resolution version of what we see, and you can therefore be guaranteed the privacy, which I think is at this point a very important issue. What we would love to do, and I suppose the question actually, I remember the low light situation. What we would like to do is maybe get one with have a wider aperture, so it's a little less sensitive, or even more sensitive, should I say, to light. So it might be able to count in lower light situations. Even street lights aren't usually enough. If you're sitting outside a stadium with really bright lights, that would be slightly different. Street lights are usually not enough for a camera in the dark. But that's one of the things that we're tweaking on at the moment in terms of the counts for nighttime counts for the cars.
Great. Any other questions from the floor?
Just a small practical one. In terms of the power, I guess this is just plugs in like a charging a phone. It just plugs into a normal socket. And how long is the cable in terms of trying to figure out what window it could go in?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. It does plug into a normal plug. It's actually very low power usage. It's something like a watt. So I think in terms of usage cost, it's something like a couple of euros worth of electricity over a year. But it does need some power. It uses a USB-C connector. So any USB to USB-C, which is what most mobile phones are these days, and it can be any length you want. So we'll supply you with a 3-meter cord, which hopefully is long enough. But if you want to do more, you can. There's no limit on that. Just as an example, our outdoor device will hopefully be able to run on a relatively small solar panel with a battery pack, so that it is completely independent. That's one of the things we're testing. It will also be able to be plugged in, but you might be able to run it with we should be able to run it with a solar panel and a battery pack, because it's relatively low power when we come to that. As I say, hopefully that's coming later on this year. And I suppose the other quick question, which I should have put in the presentation, is if this sparks an interest of, I wish I could collect data, or I now think I could collect data. If you want to run via Dave, who has advice, or contact me direct, I'm happy to chat to you about how we might be able to apply this for you. You know, it's just a question of timing and getting someone funded.
There's a question there from John.
Yeah. Hi, Robert. I purchased a Telraam S2, and I had it on Bonham Quay in Galway for a number of months. I also tried it outside my own home as well. However, once it seemed to count correctly, I was never able to verify what it could actually see, as I never succeeded in uploading an image. And I could never get to a satisfactory, sorry, I didn't have a lot of time to get near it or anything like that, but I was never certain what the image the device was looking at was. And I moved around in a number of different locations. I just used the USB battery pack, as we just talked about there a moment, and moved in the locale and never, sorry, I didn't persevere. I just didn't have time to get near it. And I'm wondering, is this an issue that anybody else has had, maybe in Ireland, because the size of image, I don't know, Robert.
Yeah, no, it is a good point. We have had some issues. So I know there's actually a network going into Cork at the moment, and I know they've had a couple of issues of that. So just to explain to everyone else, you set up the device, it does two things. One is it sends the data to us, and that packet is very small. So it's very easy, whatever the quality of signal is, to send us that packet. As long as it has connection, it should be able to send us the data every 15 minutes. Basically, every hour, every quarter hour, it'll send us that data. It goes onto our server. What you can do is what John is describing, is set what we call a region of interest. So you can log into your device, take a single snapshot and say, right, I want you to look at this particular section of your available widescreen. Wide angle image, and so improve it and ignore certain areas. Now that is a very big image, because it's a big packet to send to us, because it's a very big image file. We have had some issues in some parts of Ireland. I suspect it's about the quality of the local network. It's not a device issue as such. It's actually the network that we're connecting to. We are about to switch providers to a new provider who we're hoping will also address this. It's actually being done to address a problem in the UK, but the new device is going to Ireland will also have this new tool, which I hope will also offer better connection to the mobile network to send us the data. So we will see whether that continues and whether it can improve in certain areas. But yeah, we have had that. We have had that issue. The device should be able to pick up. It uses the AI to select the most appropriate area, so it should be okay. But if you log in, you can tell it and be more, add your own intelligence to that machine, which would obviously be better if it could work. So it's something we're looking into. I'll be honest, one of the other new members of our team is a specialist in the firmware and as soon as we've got this new device out, he's also going to be looking at that. That's one of the questions we in fact discussed today to try and improve all that.
Okay. Will you be able to push out a firmware update such that it picks up a different IoT provider in the cloud, whatever?
That's the idea. So we should be able to, firmware updates can be sent over the air. Again, it'll partly depend on signals quality, but yeah, if nothing else, we can we'll chat to you about this to make sure that we're getting devices that work for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I see Connor has his hand up. I might just add our two devices. I haven't been successful doing their region of interest either, but both our devices are in sort of metal warehouse type buildings, and so we sort of put that down to the signal not being great.
It can be affected. I think we've got some in Ennis, and they're in beautiful ex-castle buildings with 10-foot thick walls of stone. They look lovely, but it's not ideal for the latest Internet of Things data connections.
Yeah, I might add, I walked around in various locales to see if I could set a region of interest when I had to just buy a battery pack to no avail.
It could be the local area as well, of course. Yes, the local signal depend on how. I think it's EE that provides the signal, or 3. I think it's 3 actually that provides the signal.
3,
yeah. So it's something we need to sort of, we'll see once we connect with this new one, a new provider. Maybe they've got some different agreements that maybe move us to a different network that has a better connection.
Connor, you had a question?
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say, Dave, thanks a million for organising this. This has been really fascinating. Robert, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. I know friends who have had the devices, and it's been really interesting hearing from their experience about it. But I was just wondering if from a kind of a technical point of view, I was wondering, like, I'm just imagining. So, like, I'm very familiar with Ennis, but I actually live in Dublin, and there are some areas where it's much lower density, and the buildings might be inset further from the street or road, and then obviously in urban cities, then probably an apartment window or a shop window might be much more closer to the footpath than to the road. Would it be an option to have kind of swappable lenses? I'm kind of thinking of what Moment have for like smartphones and stuff, where you can put on a wide angle lens or a telephoto lens to be able to, rather than kind of specifying a zone of interest, that you can actually just like kind of use the level of resolution that you have, but swap out, the lens so as to be able to pick it up. And if you were doing that, then maybe that would be an opportunity maybe for adjusting the sensitivity with like a Polaroid lens or something like that. I know I'm getting really technical and nerdy here, and I don't even apologize.
No, this sounds like.
I'd imagine you've probably thought of all of this and probably 1,000 other things, but I'm just curious. But yeah, and every success. So thanks a million. Yeah.
No, thank you. Every month or so, we have what we call a Telraam Talks Hangout, where our CEO Chris comes along, and we just get feedback from the community and chat about all this. Sounds like a perfect question for him during that, which I'll just preview is coming up next Wednesday on the 1st of May. We're going to have one in the evening. It's similar to this. It's very informal. Lots of opportunity to chat. Great question for that. I think the answer to that is not right now. The idea of the S2 is that it's plug and play, so people don't have to do anything with it. When you had the Raspberry Pi, you had to do various things, and it excluded a lot of people who wanted to be part of this. Maybe they were elderly and they weren't, didn't hotspot a device, etc. So we wanted to make this plug and play. As we go on, yes, there might be other ways to look at this and make it more specific for an area, especially if we're looking at outdoor devices. They might have different requirements. So we'll see how this goes. you know, if we luck out and get a massive investment from Bill Gates or someone with a few million to spare for a development, we could do multiple variations. So if anyone has any good connections, let me know. I'm happy to. We'll be happy to spend your money in development.
Fantastic. That's a great dropping off point. Now, I'd say I'll email you Bill Gates's email address. I have it. On
thank you.
My other computer there. Brilliant. Well, look, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for coming in on such a gorgeous evening and being so engaging. Thanks so much for Robert for the presentation and all of the information. That's been absolutely super. And I think Telraam talks, maybe I'll send around some links to everybody if anyone wants to attend that. So